Hey guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different because today we're going to make 3 different tier lists for several Runeterra cosmetics and Runeterra champions. So the first one we have here is a tier list for Runeterra boards. I posted one of these on my Twitter a month ago or so, but tier lists have been a pretty hot topic ever since. So I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to explain some of my thoughts in a video. After this, I'm going to do a tier list for Runeterra champions. And after that, I made a tier list for emotes on stream, and that will be at the end. So to start things off, we have the arcade board. I'm not a fan of this one. I don't think it's quite F tier material, but I do think it's D tier. I think the music gets annoying after a little while. As far as arcade goes, they have like fantastic skins in League of Legends. And I think the board is just a little bit too bright. It's a little too happy. It doesn't really fit a deck. Like when you pick a board, it should match the deck you're playing. Like if you're playing Mono Targon, well, you should go with the Celestial board. If you're playing Mono Shurima, you have to go with the Shurima board. And arcade fits exactly nothing. So for that reason, D tier. Next is the Mono Shurima board, or the Shurima board, I guess. I think this one is very good, actually, and you pretty much have to play this if you're going with a Mono Shurima deck. It's high tier if you play Mono Shurima, but that is a bad deck. So just for aesthetic and music, I'm going to put it in B tier. I think it's very above average. I'm never unhappy playing on this board, but I also just don't think that it's, it's good enough to just play anywhere. Celestial Summit is, in my opinion, S tier. It's low S tier, but I'm going from left to right. So I'm putting it at the start of S tier for now. I think the music is super chill. The aesthetics are beautiful. And if you're playing any Targon deck, I always equip this board because it's just super thematic. Next up is the Ionia board, which in my opinion is F tier. I hate Ionia, which is no surprise, but I also think this board, it's not the ugliest board, but it doesn't do anything for me. I think it's bland. I think it's boring. So it's an F tier. Club Ox. I was pretty hyped about this one when it came out, but I just don't use it all that much. It's a little too upbeat. Once again, it doesn't fit any deck theme. I'm putting it in C tier because I still think it looks nice. It has some nice visuals. It's nowhere near S or A tier. Shadow Owl board is also F tier in my opinion. I think it's boring. I also get really upset when I play labs and I have to play the first 3 matches because they all use this board. I think it's ugly. Shadow Owls is a fun region, but it's too green. That's my main complaint with Shadow Owls, really. That's why I love Kindred's packets so much, because it's not just all green. Shadow Owls is it's too much green. It's boring. If you're playing a Shadow Owl deck, all your cards are going to be green anyway. Like, why do you need a green board as well? I think it's just a little too much. So, F tier. This is the board with the Mega Guardian. When I rated this for the first time, I put it in C tier on my Twitter, and I'm still going to put that there. And I put this board, the one without the Mega Guardian, 1 tier or 2 tiers higher. I think it's B tier. I really like the Darkstar aesthetics, especially in League of Legends. I really like their skins. And the reason I'm having the Mega Guardian a little bit lower is because it's very noisy and it covers some stuff that you need. Like sometimes it covers your deck, it covers your Nexus health. The thing is just too big. And if you need that vital information, the Mega Guardian's hand is in front of that. That's no good. I really like how when you click the board, you have like some meteors falling down and it like obliterates a planet. I still think the other board is slightly better. The Spirit Blossom board is C tier. I think it looks gorgeous. I almost put it in D tier, but honestly, it's saved by the fact that it came out during the Spirit Blossom event and that it was very, very thematic for that. During that event, I basically had this equipped permanently because I was pretty hyped for that event. And, Runeterra was just all about that Spirit Blossom and all the new cosmetics that we got. So I'm putting it in C tier because also for this board, there's no real deck theme that you can go for. Like you could be playing Ionia, I guess. With Ionia, this deck is somewhat thematic. I think it's much better than the regular Ionia board, but it's just not quite good enough to be any higher because I don't default to this board ever. Garen is F tier. So the problem with the Garen board, I think, is that it has a huge picture of Garen on the board. And I know this is gonna get a lot of hate. I'm also putting Jinx in F tier. I'm putting it at the start of F tier though. Because the Jinx character is just on the board. And that, I think, is just so in your face. Like, I don't need to see Jinx there to know that this is a Jinx board. I don't need to see Garen there to know it's a Garen board. Everything else, like every visual, every prop on that board already shows, hey, there's some rockets here, there's some bullets, there's Jinx music playing in the background. I know this is a Jinx board. I don't also need to see her in my face. The one redeeming quality for the Jinx board though that might actually make me want to put it in D tier is the fact that it's pretty mandatory if you're playing discard. If you're playing a discard deck, you need the Jinx board. So, you know, I will come back on that. I still think Garen is F tier though, because it doesn't have anything going for it. Jinx is D tier, just because of discard. So Halls of Valor was originally F tier, but then I heard the music. The music of this board is top tier, so I'm putting it in D, because I don't think it looks good. There was also a glitch, I think, where there was like when the turn ended or something, there was like a super bright visual that made it hard to see. I don't know if they fixed that, I don't know if that's still a thing, but because of the music, I'm putting it in D. The Haunted Grounds was a board I was pretty high on when it got released because I was happy to have like a spooky board to play instead of the Shadow Owl board, but it wasn't very good. It's still pretty ugly, I think. There's not much going on the board. It's still better than Shadow Owls because it's like a themed, limited time only kind of board, so it's, you know, it's slightly better, but I can't go any higher than D tier. Piltover and Zaun, or just Piltover, I guess, is F tier. Actually, it's probably one of my least favorite boards because I feel like there's so much potential to do cool stuff with Piltover, and then they choose like an ugly inside of a mechanic lab. The potential is just wasted in my opinion. It's F tier. I think most of the basic boards are actually F tier. Freljord is an exception. Freljord is one of the best basic boards because they were like, with basic boards, I mean the boards that were in the game at the start. Freljord is fantastic. It has a really nice screen when you start the game. The music is really chill. It's super thematic for Ashe decks. So yeah, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, basic boards. KDA, F tier. I hate this board so much. The music is loud. We accidentally click the board because, you know, I'm only having my opponent play this board when I'm against them. It makes like this weird like boop, like some strange sound, and it just annoys me every time. I also still think that the KDA cards, the whole theme around them and like the way they were implemented in Runeterra was a mistake. The feeling of it was just off. Having like a dancing Ahri in Freljord is just weird. As cool of a card that I think Feel the Rush is, it's completely off-putting by the KDA dancing. And I will say that I actually like the KDA music. I listened to songs like More and Pop Stars to death. So it's definitely not just me hating on KDA. It's just the whole K-pop thing in Runeterra is just a huge mismatch. Lee Sin board is kind of the same as Garen and Jinx because they have like, it has like this Lee Sin on the middle of the board, but it's a lot more subtle. I'm putting this F tier because I also really like I think it's when you end the turn, there's like a wind, like a gust of wind blowing that does some stuff to the props on the board. So easy D tier. It is Lee Sin though, and I hate Lee Sin, so that would be one reason to put an F, but just for the board, I'll keep it in D. The Night Spirit Blossom board, I think, is a little worse than the regular Spirit Blossom. I feel like these two have to be kind of close to each other because they're like almost the exact same thing, except one is day, one is night. I'm never unhappy equipping this, but I don't see why you choose this over the regular Spirit Blossom because Spirit Blossom fits a lot better in a lot of Ionia decks. And this, I don't really know when you'd equip this. Maybe like a Spooky Karma deck. I could see this for a Spooky Karma deck, actually. That'd be very nice. But this is still just overall an easier match for the decks you're playing. Earth is F tier. I don't like the music. I don't like the sounds. I don't like the Earth Guardian at all. I also think it doesn't really fit the theme of Runeterra. I don't know what deck you'd have to be playing to equip this board. So for me, it's just an F tier. Noxus Arena is F tier. It's one of the better basic boards because, you know, we don't actually have very many good basic boards. It feels pretty thematic if you're playing like mono Noxus, which used to be a thing for a while with like the Darrowing. For that deck, I think this is a perfect match, but it's still bad. It's just bland. Bilgewater is S tier. The music, the visuals, the cannons, the little seagulls flying around. Absolutely amazing board. One of the first boards that actually got released with the game, if I'm not mistaken, because when Runeterra left open beta, that was also the release of Bilgewater. And I'm pretty sure this was in the shop at that point. So the fact that they added a new board for the first time, basically, was kind of amazing to me. And the fact that it was so insane for Bilgewater decks made an easy S tier. I still equip this board every single time I'm playing a Bilgewater deck. I forgot the name of this. It's like Snowy Glade or something. I think it's an A tier. During like December, November even, this is a top tier board. You have to equip this one. The music is super chill. It's really good when you're playing Freljord decks too because of the snow and stuff. I really like this board. The default board, I think I don't love it because it's bland, but it is like a classic, you know? You don't feel bad about equipping this. It's either B or C. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna put it in B because for basic boards, it's actually really good and it's not ugly. Like, if you don't know what to equip, you're not unhappy with this board. Time Temple is also A tier. Fantastic music, very thematic for Zillion decks, even for Echo decks, because Echo seems to be played with Shurima. So there's actually a lot of applications for this deck, especially with Shurima being so good. I think this is better than the default Shurima board, just because the music is better and, you know, the visuals are also a little nicer. So if I'm playing Shurima, I would equip Time Temple before I'd equip the, I don't know the name, like Desert Oasis. I don't know the official name for these things. And then we have the Zon board. I'm disappointed with this one because I was very hyped about this board because it came out with Victor, and Victor is one of my favorite champions. But I never equip this when I'm playing Victor, not once. I'm putting it in D because the music is okay. It's thematic. It has some stuff going on. I like that you can see like the Undercity next to your board or next to like your cards and stuff. It's not a bad board, but it's just, it's not quite there. And the last two are the last two boards that were added. Sadly, I don't have like their icons, so I had to do it like this. This is the Pike board. Sunken Shipyard. Easy S tier. The way the music ramps up as the game progresses is so hype and makes the game so intense. Also, this is a Pike board, and they didn't have to like put Pike on the board to show you that it's a Pike deck. There's like fish, like the shadow of a fish is like going by. There's the shark teeth. It's a perfect board. Absolutely amazing. They blew it out of the water with this board. I'm very happy it's in the game. I equip it when I'm playing Build Fodder. I equip it like 50% of the time, and when I'm playing Pike deck, I equip it 100% of the time. I think this is like the golden standard. If you want to make an amazing board for a champion, it should be like this one. Next is another kind of seasonal board. We had the Snowy Glade, and now we have the Lagoon of Legends. I think it's a little worse than Pike, but it's still the second best board in the game. If you have heard the music of this board once, I refuse to believe that you did not go to YouTube, search for Lagoon of Legends music, and then put it on repeat. This board has the chillest music I have heard in any card game ever. Every time I play with this board, I'm just jamming. I'm just bopping my head at how chill this music is. I would equip this on any deck I play. I could be playing a Mono Shadow Owl deck. I would still consider equipping this just because the visuals, like the water splashing, the music, everything is so perfect. I love this board. Also, I just realized that I don't actually have the new Sentinels of Light board. There's 4 of them. I think I would rate them all in the same tier. Even though I think the Riven one is the best visually, I would put it at the bottom or at the end of A tier. Because the music is really good, the visuals are good, there are some clickable elements. So it's an A tier for me. The next tier list is a champion tier list, but I'm not doing it on their strength or power level. I'm purely basing this on deck building possibilities, how fun they are to play, and how good they are in the deck you're building for them. I don't really play meta decks. Like, I could look at an Azir Relia deck, and Irelia is pretty limited in her deck building. So, you know, for that reason, she'd be in like D tier. But he is one of the most powerful decks in the game, so for that reason, she'd be S tier. For me, for this tier list, she would go in, well, there's no F tier, but she would go in D tier, because I just don't care about meta stuff. I only care about how fun and how flexible they are for deck building. So to start off, we have Garen. You can't really build a deck around Garen. Garen is just a tool you put in a certain list to make the list better at combat. Because Garen, if you level him, he allows you to have combat more often. I don't really build decks with that in mind. I don't build a deck where it's like, okay, I want to fight, I want to go into combat as often as possible, because that would be a scout deck, and even scout decks run Quinn and not Garen. So I don't think he's quite D tier because he is a solid unit. There's no bad stats. You can pretty much jam him in every deck with a little bit of backup and he's playable, but he doesn't really enable anything. And the same kind of goes for Lucian, but I think Lucian is a little more flexible because Lucian is playable if all you do is put in 3 Sennas. Lucian is also more fun to build a deck around because while Garen has synergy with stuff like single combat or concerted strike to let him strike and get close to the level up, Lucian has synergy with single combat to let his allies die or to let Senna die to level him up. And when Lucian levels, I think it's a much cooler game finisher than Garen actually is. Lux is C tier, and that I was considering putting her in D tier, but the fact is that Lux is kind of a control champion in a very combat-heavy region like Demacia. Demacia is very one-dimensional. All their champions do the same thing. They want to be in combat. All of them get hard countered by freezes, except Lux. So Lux lets you go into a different direction with Demacia. The problem is that she's bad. So building decks around her is usually a bait. It doesn't work. You don't get very good decks when you experiment with Lux. So she's still in C tier. I don't like building decks for her because Demacia is only good at one thing. Sadly, Lux has not enabled any other playstyle for Demacia. So it's C tier. Fiora is D tier. For the simple reason that if you build a deck with Fiora, you have to go all in on protecting Fiora. And that's a very heavy deck building cost. And even if you do that, the deck will still play out like every other Shen Fiora list, every other all-in Fiora list, and that's boring. So Fiora is a very easy D tier. Braum is also C tier. I think the only thing about Braum that's fun is when you buff his stats. So in decks where the focus is buffing stats, he's fun to play. He's not super competitive because even now in this meta, with a region like Ionia being very good, he just gets stunned, he just gets recalled after you buff him up, and then you're left with nothing. It's a real shame that he is so bad, but it's still better than having him as a 1-5 like we did last year, because that completely broke the game as well. I think Braum just needs a little more going for him. They could probably make him like a 0-6, so he survives a few more things, like he survives a Monster Harpoon sometimes. And yeah, I don't know. It's an awkward card to use. It's hard to build a deck around him. He's not even played in Poro decks anymore, so from a fun standpoint, you can't really do any super exciting stuff with Braum. Anivia is a D tier. For the same reason as Fiora, you have to play her with Shadow Owls, you have to go all in on reviving her, playing Harrowing, because she doesn't really do anything in Freljord itself. If you play her in Freljord, there's no way to get her to revive from the egg. You need to ramp, and when you're at 10 mana, a 3-5 that does 2 to everything is actually just not enough. So it is kind of a shame because I feel like Anivia could be much more than she actually is. But deck building wise, he is very restricting and I do not enjoy building decks with her. Ashe is C tier. There are some fun things you can do with Ashe, like you can experiment with Ashe in Demacia. You can experiment with Ashe in Shadow Owls, like the Spooky Ashe has been pretty fun. Those are not particularly decks that I like to play because I think Ashe is one-dimensional. She is a fun card, but deck building wise, you can't really do a whole lot with her. Tryndamere is D tier. Also, probably to no surprise, he is one of the most bland cards in the game. There's no flashy effect. All he does is like revive once after he dies and gets a little stronger. I think that's super boring. Doesn't have any like super high and cool moments. Zed, I will put in B tier. Even if he's not one of my favorite champions to build decks with, he is very flexible and he does go into a bunch of different decks to have like kind of that stabilizing factor. He's very good against aggro decks because aggro decks hate blocking, but they kind of have to block Zed because even if he levels, he has a chance to end the game. He's fun in hand buff decks. He's fun with like syncopation cards, even with Targon to keep him like alive and healthy and let him keep attacking. So he's a flexible card, and for that reason, he's B tier. Yasuo is D tier. You need stuns with Yasuo, and even though he's playable in Targon and Noxus, you still need to run like an entire stun package to actually do anything with Yasuo. That's a little too restricting. Every deck you're going to build with Yasuo is going to be called a Yasuo deck. And in general, that's not really a good thing. Mostly because he is not a very good champion. So having something called a Yasuo deck is already a downside. Karma is B tier. I don't like Ionia, like I've said like 3 times already this video. But I think that Karma enables a lot of really fun combos. For example, Glorious Evolution with Karma, getting everything twice. Discounting everything by 2. Super cool. As much as I hate the OTK stuff that Karma can do, there are some really, really sweet and fun combos you can do with her. So much so that I'm fine with putting her in B tier. Vladimir C tier. Oops. And I understand that he should probably go in D tier because of his heavy deck building costs. You need to like self-damage. But I think that he's a bit of a personal favorite. I do really enjoy experimenting with Vladimir outside of Noxus and Freljord with the self-damaging stuff. And I think that's mainly because the Crimson package is just so cool. Like the Crimson Curator is one of the coolest cards in the game in my opinion. The voice lines are just so funny. And having all those chonkers generate even more chonkers to kind of go like infinite is just one of the highest moments that you can get with Vladimir. And it's super cool every time. So I'm pretty happy to put him in C tier. Draven is also B tier because he's flexible. You can put him in decks and never really feel bad about having him there. He doesn't really create any super like high or cool moments by himself, But just the fact that you can have him in a deck and be playable, like I played a Lucian Draven deck that was just like mid-range goodness, and he felt super good there, and it was actually really fun to play with him. He's honestly only in B tier because he's flexible. Like, both Zed, Lucian, and Draven are in B tier because they're flexible. Karma's in B tier because he enables combos, and she can do a lot of fun stuff, but she is held back a little bit by that OTK degeneracy. So that's why, for example, Karma's not in A, but in B instead, because, you know, Karma does need some spells to actually be usable. And yeah, Draven is just in the same line as Zed and Lucian, so he goes in B tier. There he is, just like Snnuy, just like Anivia Fiora, just bland, D tier. Katarina, I hate this champion, absolutely unusable, D tier. Teemo, I feel like is also B tier, because you can build decks around him. It's basically like Karma. You can build a deck around him and he's going to create some really fun and high moments, but they're all still Shroom decks. And by now, there is an optimal way to play a Shroom deck with Ezreal. So if that deck didn't exist and Team was more of a meme card and not super viable or competitive, where he would still see a lot of experimentation elsewhere, he would be in A. Ezreal I'm putting in C. I could see him going in B, but you still have to have like that targeting, and then he does like OTK stuff in a lot less interesting way than Karma. So C tier. Jinx is D tier, only is playable in Discard, so not flexible at all. C was playable in Casino, I guess, but that deck is not really playable right now, so D tier. Heimerdinger is C tier as well. I think he's very fun to experiment with. He is a little disappointing because playing a 5-mana 2/4 is often just too slow and means you lose the game, but you can get some cool moments with him. Kalista also C tier, you can do some fun combos. It's hard to set up, but Kalista with like Kadrigrin, Kalista with Citria, it's all really fun stuff. It's almost impossible to get off, but, you know, on paper it's possible. For that reason, C tier. Hecarim is also C tier, because I think experimenting with ephemerals is very fun, and Hecarim is kind of the payoff for that kind of deck. That's the only reason he's in C tier, ephemeral decks. Thresh is D tier. I would like to put him higher, but I've seen enough Nasus Thresh to just be completely turned off from him. And I think pulling a champion from your deck once is just not really cool enough to put him any higher. Elise is C tier. I want to put her in D, but I think she's a really good vanilla unit that can stabilize the game and create board presence. Just really powerful, and if you need something to stabilize the early game to do something cooler late game, Elise is your girl. Misfortune is a B tier. I love Misfortune, but she needs a lot of build around to make work. You need scouts. You need to attack a lot. I know with like Pike and the Snapjaw Swarm, you can level her even faster, but quite often that's not a super realistic thing to actually achieve, so it's gotta be B tier. Twisted Fate is A tier. I would put him in S, but with the nerfs, he's a little harder to set up, and he doesn't end the game by himself. I mean, he can, because he generates so much value, but you don't get like this big explosion where it's like, oh, now the game is over. Gangplank, however, does generate that insane explosion and the game is just over, especially with a Dreadway. Gangplank can be played in aggro, and he can be played in control, and he can be played in mid-range. I think Gangplank is one of the most well-designed champions in the game for just that reason. He can go anywhere, and he'll make it work. You have to build like, you know, you need to be able to plunder, you need to build like that shell around him a little bit, but he can be a win condition in all three of those type of decks, and that is an incredible feat for a card game to accomplish. So overall, I'm just super impressed with Gangplank and how he functions in Runeterra. Fizz, I want to put him higher, but I think he's C tier. I love playing Fizz. I love building decks with him, but he also has a pretty heavy deck cost build, and all in all, he's just an annoying little elusive fish. He doesn't do much more than that. As cool as it is to dodge spells, at this point, everybody knows, do not target Fizz with anything. Do not play Make It Rain when Fizz is on the board, because he will screw you over. Nautilus is D tier, because you need to play sea monsters and you need to toss, and that's super restricting. Quinn is C tier, because I like experimenting with Quinn. She's not very good, but there are options. Also going to scroll down a little bit. Sejuani is A tier. I think she is less cool than Gangplank, but she does allow for very flexible deck building, and she is a really powerful swing unit. Like, she comes down, and she is going to remove a unit most of the time, and it's most likely going to swing the game in your favor. Lee Sin is D tier. I hate Lee Sin, that's all I need to say. I've died from 20 HP enough for a lifetime. I wish to never see this champion again. Please rework him so I can give him a proper rating, but for now I would like Runeterra more if Lee Sin did not exist. Swain is C tier. There's a really fun combo right now with Despair, where you can Despair your own Swain to kill the enemy board. Super funny, not very practical in competitive way, but a fun champion to end the game with. It's a shame that he's tied to the Leviathan, because Swain is only really good for that. Like, Leviathan is the real champion, Swain is just like, you know, the one that's there to look cool and be fearsome, but Leviathan is the real MVP. Vi is, I think, C tier, because he can do some really cool stuff with Overwhelm, but he's bland, he's pretty limiting. She doesn't have a deck building cost though, which is a good thing for her. But I think it's C tier because he's like, you know, a cooler Darius in a way. Maokai is D tier because I've tried to build decks with Maokai a million times and it never worked out. Super restricting, has to be D tier. Shyvana, after some of her buffs, I think is actually B tier. Before this, I would put her in D or C, but right now, C is just a really good mid-range unit, and she makes dragons really fun to play too. She actually levels, she feels good when she gets those Fury procs, and yeah, I'm very happy with the spot Shyvana's in right now. Trundle is C tier. I would like to put him higher, but I think he's a little bland. Like, I know I use that word a lot, but it's just a 4/5 that doesn't do anything. He's just like a stat stick, and then he levels, and he gets a pretty cool effect. The pillar is probably the coolest part about him. But we've all seen how toxic that can be with Watcher decks, so, you know, I have a hard time putting him any higher. Lulu's B tier, because he's just a cute, adorable unit that enables you to play support decks in an aggressive way. Leona is C tier, because Daybreak is straightforward. They're very one-dimensional. And sadly, Leona doesn't really enable that much in Daybreak. She's just more stalling, more stunning, more not letting the enemy play the game. Right, should give her Overwhelm back, like they did in that bug. Diana's B tier, because she's more flexible in Targon, and she can go into like mono Targon list. Taric, especially after the buffs, is A tier. Super easy A tier. So much fun to play, so much fun to build a deck around. He does have a heavy deck building requirements, because you need the self-targeting stuff. But if you can build a deck around that, where you're supporting your units, especially with the Mountain Sojourner buff, it feels so good. It's one of my favorite cards in the game after the buff. Aurelion Sol is also A tier. Aurelion Sol is one of my favorite cards in the game. I would like to put him in S, but you just can't play him everywhere. And leveling him is actually not super realistic. It's never something you can play for. It's something that sometimes just happens and then you win the game by default. Nocturne, just because I'm upset, I'm putting him in D tier. Because Nocturne's level up should really not be tied to Nightfall. It should be Nightfall or Fearsome. It should be like attack with 8 different Nightfall or Fearsome allies and then he levels. And he would be so much cooler. He would actually be playable in Fearsome decks too. Shen is C tier or D tier. Shen only sees play with Fiora and Jarvan now. But he was pretty funny to play with Sivir. Give your entire board barrier. Hard to say. I think he's a little boring. So I'm going to put him in C. Soraka is also C tier. I like building decks around Soraka, but it's not always possible. Same reason that Tahm Kench is in C tier. I want to build decks around them, but the fact that Tahm Kench is in Bilgewater makes it so restricting that it's just a hard thing to do. Riven is A tier. This might surprise some people, but I'm a big Riven fan. Building decks around her Blade Fragments and OTKing with, for example, Glorious Evolution, like the Miracle Rogue deck that I made. Very cool. Riven makes me happy. I like seeing the Blade. I like using the Blade for really sweet turns. And yeah, fun unit. Victor is S tier. And Zoe is also S tier. Victor is in my top 3 favorite cards. I love playing creation style decks. And Zoe is just super flexible. She is a perfect match for Victor. I should actually do it like this, I guess. Super sweet, super fun Targon champion. I almost can't believe I'm saying that because I know how much hate I can get for saying that Targon is fun. But with Victor, it just... Man, this deck is just so much fun, guys. There's like no deck building requirement either, except that you need like a Mountain Goat and a Ballistic Bot. Except for that, just put in what you want and the deck will work. It's fun. Aphelios after the nerfs, I think is B tier. The weapons are super flexible. You can build a lot of different ways with him. There's a lot of fun combos with some of the weapons. I think he's a fun unit. I don't want him to be as broken as before. I honestly would like to see Aphelios go to 5 mana. There's like a 5 mana 4/4, something like that, and then make his weapon go back to 2 mana. So you like pay that extra mana for the unit once, and then we get the glory of like the old Aphelios back. I think that might be a pretty good way to actually change Aphelios, but I'm no designer, so I don't know. Lysandra is C tier. She has a little bit too much going on for her. She gives the Nexus tough, she creates the Watcher, she gives you an Ice Shard every turn, she summons a Frozen Thrall. There's so many different things that happen when you play Lysandra. It's a little bit over the top. I really like Lysandra as a card, but it's hard to pinpoint her. Like, what does she really want to do? Which one of those 4 things that are all pretty cool do you want to do? Nasus is C tier. Renekton is also C tier. I like Monoshirima. I think these units are super boring if they're not in Monoshirima, because they're just kind of like stat sticks. Nasus with Atrocity is just stupid. I wish he was cooler or did something cooler and didn't need Atrocity to end games. And Renekton is only played in Overwhelm decks right now. So it's kind of a miss in my opinion. I like the synergy that Renekton has with the vulnerable or the challenging stuff. I wish he was played in Demacia, but it's just not very realistic. Sivir is D tier. I think Sivir used to be pretty fun, but she's so broken now, and the level up requirement at 30 is just too broken. She's kind of ruling the meta right now, and it frustrates me. I don't think she's that fun to build around either. It's just a 5-3 with quick attack and spell shield. It's completely overstated. Doesn't enable anything sweet in a deck, so D tier it is. Talia is A tier. I personally really like playing Talia. The fact she enables so many landmark decks is really fun too. And even though she's not that great at what she does, she still generates value when you play her, and then she gets a pretty fun level up effect. Azir I will put in B tier. I'm putting him above Nasus and Renekton because I think he's a little more flexible in decks. It's fun to play around the Sand Soldiers. Azir Relia is not fun. But playing, for example, Bilgewater Azir with Powder Monkeys, Jack Taskmaster, even the spell that gives Sand Soldiers +1 attack, I think that's super cool. Jarvan, after his buff, is A tier. I really like playing Jarvan. The fact that he actually levels up now is fantastic as well. It's super fun to see him jump out of your hand when you attack. Really cool unit, badass voice lines, badass level up, very good champion. Kindred is B tier, and that is because I have a weak spot for Kindred. I really like playing her. I love their character, but she's bad in Runeterra. I wish I could build more decks around her, but at this point, Viego just does what she does better. I'll actually jump to Viego and put him in A tier. With Viego, Shadow Owl's got a control champion. So the future is looking very, very bright for Viego, which I think is a good thing because he is kind of becoming like a poster child for Runeterra and for League in general. This event has been super cool, and having Viego as one of the main characters and the main badass is just cool. I like Viego. LeBlanc is C tier for the simple reason... I actually need to zoom out a little bit. For the simple reason that she does not feel like what she should be from her lore and from her playstyle in Runeterra, in League of Legends. She should be like the Deceiver, but her gameplay in Runeterra does not show that at all, unless you level her, and then you get 15 more damage to generate those mirror images in hand. And even that doesn't really feel like something a Deceiver would do. Aurelia is D tier. I've seen enough Azir Relia. She can only be played in Shurima with Sand Soldiers. I guess she can be played with Misfortune, but it's just a worse Azir Relia, so it feels kind of bad. I really hate Blade Dance. I really don't like Aurelia. I really don't like Ionia. I also hate playing against Aurelia in regular League, so it's a shame she exists. Nullfight is B tier. I like landmarks. I like dropping down a big chunky dude that doesn't die and then gives you like a spell that stuns the entire enemy board. He has like his fist coming out of the sky to like slam down the enemy. It's just really cool. It's kind of a shame that he's in Targon. I would like to see him go to Ishtal if Ishtal was the new region, but I'm not unhappy. Zillion, I actually like Zillion. I'm gonna put him in B. He's a pretty bad card. Time Bombs are also bad cards, so he kind of like dilutes your entire deck with more bad draws. But if you level him and you get that disco dance animation, it feels super good. It's like a value overload. So because of the sweet things you can do with him and the deck building that's not really that heavy, all you need is like a few predicts. He's a cool champion. Echo, I'm also putting in B tier because I love the idea of having your deck or filling your deck with really powerful cards and then fishing them out with predict. And Echo is really like the centerpiece of that, as weird as that sounds. Like you want to shuffle Hexite Crystals from the cat, you want to shuffle Kyrian Sump Workers to transform them. You want to shuffle these Xenotype Researchers to give your deck +3/+3 and fish them out with Echo. Even Zillion's Time Bombs. Echo, when he levels up, you get the revive. The Parallel Conversion that gives you like a free attack with all the ephemeral units that you just had, and then reviving them with Echo's level up. It's all really cool stuff. It's a shame that it's a little too slow because it would be a super cool deck. Next up is Pyke. Pyke is very restricting. I think he's a super, super cool card, but you need to play him with Lurk, mostly. I'm still putting him in A tier, because I have built a Turbo Pyke deck, and Lurk is one of my favorite decks. I would like to put him higher, because, yeah, some of you know he's my main in League of Legends. I still think they nailed like his level up, and what he does when he strikes somebody, like he can clear an entire board. It's super thematic, all of it. The fact he turns into a spell, like he comes from underwater like in League, and then hits something. It all feels so well done for how a champion is and works in the main game. Rek'sai is B tier, also restricted to Lurk in a way, but you know, with Noxus and having the Thorn Blade and just power leveling Rek'sai has been really cool, and I really like it, like the value. I also think her effect is super unique, like being a 3-mana 3/6 is insane, but then the fact that she goes back into the deck at the end of the turn, there's a lot of counterplay. I think Rek'sai is an extremely well-balanced champion, but it's a shame she's so tied to Lurk. It makes sense though, because she doesn't require work or deck building to be able to stay on the board anyway. Lurk makes that consistent, and that's cool. Ikson is also B tier. I think he's a little too simple. I think he's a little easy to just plop down and get value. And I think Viego needs some more work and gets a sweeter payoff for it. Ikson can do some degenerate infinite combos. He does some degenerate stuff with Lee Sin. So when those things are kind of fixed and he becomes more about that self-targeting, like, for example, I'd like to see him be optimal in a Riven deck, that would make me feel really good about Ikson. But right now, I don't like the way people are using him in decks. And then we're going to jump over to the Emote tier list that I made on stream. I'm going to be talking to chat a little bit during it, so forgive me for that. I was gathering information and opinions too. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list, and I'll see you next time. All right, let's do this thing. So KDA emotes are horrible. KDA emotes are so bad, like the style is completely off. I could just like search them and put them there because they're all just awful. Really, really bad. Bottom of the list. Was that all of them? I actually hate this one too, putting it there. Start from the beginning. We have Ikson. This emote is incredible, but it's not quite S tier. I think it's a little niche in when you can use it. I'm gonna put it in A because I still think it's very, very good, but not quite S. A for Ikson, yeah. Aphelios, I have not seen this used once. I think it's also one of the worst emotes because it's like doing that meme where like the guy is looking back at a girl when he's with his girlfriend, right? He's supposed to be that guy, but I don't see the application in a card game, so I'm putting it in F. I'm putting it above KDA though because they're KDA. I think Seraphine is actually the best KDA emote, but yeah. Aurelion Sol, A tier. I feel like this is the least cringe emotes you can use when you did something awesome. You make a sweet play, your Aurelion Sol emote. If you make a sweet play and you do something like, I don't know, what is there? Like a Yone who's like kind of like, hey, look at me, I'm so cool. Or the Echo even. I think you're being a little cringe. A little bit. I think Aurelion Sol is so over the top that it's like, this is so cringe to do. Like you're giving finger guns when you do something awesome. It's so stupid and over the top that it's not cringe anymore, you know? It's like this irony thing. All right. Azir. This one is hard, I think, because I think it's a good emote, but I don't really like the way it looks. I think it's D or C. I'm putting it in D for now. I think D is correct for this because it's only usable when your opponent shows that they're salty. You can only use this when your opponent, when you're like about to kill your opponent or something, and they do an emote that shows that they're salty or they're upset, and then you do Azir. B because it's an awesome finish. I think it's a worse finisher than most other emotes. Hey Snnuy, what the hell? I finger gun IRL all the time. I loaded my double index finger and pew pew pew. Yeah, you're a cool dude. It's not cringe when you do it IRL. It is in a video game. Like, look at how over the top this is. Azir and C are both yellow, so it should be there. Incredibly good point for a tier list like this. This is something I should consider. So I'm putting him in C for that. Braum emote is S tier. As much as I hate it, it's just used for way too many things. You start the game, you use the Braum emote, it's friendly. You use it later, you're being a complete jerk, but it is very effective at that. So as much as I hate to get Braum emoted, I'm putting an S tier just because it's you can't beat it. It's probably the single best and popular emote to use in Runeterra. Like if we had like use it stats for emotes, I think Braum would be #1. Also because it's free. Hello, Quister. It's not used for many things. It's only used to say hello and say, hey, yeah, well, exactly. But it is really, really good at doing it for those exact two things. The ha, I know Swim really likes the ha emote, but I think it's B tier. When your opponent makes a questionable play, I think it's good. That one is too cute to be B tier. Yeah, I just think there are other emotes that do it better. It's like, why did you make that play? Like, huh, what are you doing? And there are so many emotes that can do that. Like, even Darius, I think, is better at it. It's effective, but there are just emotes that do it better. Tiari is probably D. It's cute, one of the better what emotes. I mean, it's not even like a card in the game. It's just like a cute little fox. If this was an actual card, is it an actual card? I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not an actual card. That's Spirit Blossom Ari. I believe that. This is just D tier because I don't see it used that much and I don't see the point of it. You can use this when you're like genuinely happy about something. I use Tiari to say hello, and when I make a good play, it's pretty versatile. Yeah, that's true, actually. I'm bumping this up to C. So, yeah, okay. I'm bumping it up one tier. Even though I don't see it used that often. I think it's a little limited in what you can use it for. Tiari never feels right to use arguing for high. I used it a bit when it came out, but never after that. I think Citra is D tier. It's actually not terrible. I would use this when I'm like nervous about a card my opponent could have. Show that I'm sweating. But once again, I think Ezreal, Diana do that a lot better. I mean, S is highest, F is lowest. Pride emotes are S tier for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm purely rating it on using them in-game. Darius is E tier. I think the only emote you should ever use when you're angry is Renekton. But we'll get to that one later. Darius, I think, is actually A tier. Don't hate my boy Darius. No, just this one. I think this is A tier. It's too good, too versatile. I think Diana is S tier. This is my personal opinion. Diana, this is one of my favorite emotes. I think it captures the meme so well with like dipping the sweat from that meme. And I would use this over Ezreal. Draven, I never use. This is E. I'm disappointed with the Echo emotes. I thought they were going to be better, but I don't see them. I think they're C, because they're not bad at what they do. But the fact you're forced to use both of them, like you have to use 2 emote slots for them, is a big downside. Elise is actually pretty good, but I don't love it. C tier. Ezreal is high A. If you're really angry, you should use Swoon or Lulu. Yeah, I agree. This one is terrible. This one is also terrible. I really hate this one. It's like to bring it on. But when you're playing like 2 meta decks against each other, like you're telling your opponent to bring it on with like their field rush or something, and then you deny it. This feels cringe. You're not bringing anything on. You just have an answer for your opponent. Cat is B tier because I think it's good, but I think you can only use it with Nocturne. Or is Nocturne? Nocturne is A tier. This is like a package as well. If you play Nocturne, you have to use the cat. But I think you can actually play Nocturne without the cat. But if you want to go like that extra step, you play the cat too. All the cats in B. Garen, B tier. It saw a lot of play when it came out. Why is so this one? Because I think there are better ways to do it. Better ways to use the Garen S, Garen hard. Wait a second, Cryo. What? No, Garen is B. It saw a lot of play at the start, but if you want a BM, I think Braum is better. I don't like Garen Birthday. I don't like it either, but I still think it's effective. Gangplank is good when somebody's roping, but that's the only use for it. Heimerdinger, I'm going to put it behind Ha, because I think Ha is better than Heimer. It has to be A. Actually, it does have... Well, I don't know. It's free. You get it at the start of the game. Okay, it has to be A, because it's actually just... Yeah, no, it has to be A. Heimer is A. No, you guys are right. I'm too paid to win, but this has to be A. I never see this one used either, and it's Aurelia, so it's either E or F. Might actually be F. Yeah, let's do it F because it's Aurelia. It's the roping. That's a good point, actually. You can use this during rope. That's a really good point. All right, Jinx is actually really good too. It's free. You get it at the start of the game. It has to be B or C, I think. All right, Karma S tier, obviously. Hope your day has been good so far. Hey, thank you, Seabass. I hope yours is going great as well. This is a worse Garen. LeBlanc. E. Leona is good. Leona's really good, actually. I think that's an A tier. I think this emote is super sleeper. The Blanc emote is JoJo emote. It can't, oh, and I didn't see that. Wait, is it actually? Then I feel like I'm not qualified to rate the Katarine emote. All right, this is like, I think this is the best emote in the game. I'm putting it up there. Garen is at least A. Where'd I put Garen? I put him in B. I think Garen is a worse Braum. Why KDA emotes get so much hate? Because their flavor is just so off. They all look different too. Like their style is different than from all the other emotes. Lux is not bad. I'm putting it in D. This one, doesn't make sense to me. I think the Misfortune emote is good, but it's cringe. If you use this, you're cringe. I like what it does. It makes sense for her character, but I just feel cringe every time I try to use this. So this Misfortune, I think, is better than Ha. But I think it's worse than Heimerdinger. No way. You mean the Misfortune one? It's like, what are you doing? And this is the same, but this is Misfortune. So, I mean, Ha is S tier? I don't know. I don't see it. I think there are so many emotes that you can use when your opponent is doing something questionable that it's hard to put them all together. Like, some are just clearly better than the others. And I think going like that with a character like Misfortune is just better than this thing. But Ha is the most BM by far? You think so? What's the base on the rating? Just my personal opinion. I thought that, no, this is Misfortune. A lot of people think this was Vi, but it's the Misfortune skin from Wild Rift, the Lunar Beast. All right, if chat actually thinks that is S tier, I'm willing to go to meet you halfway and put it in A, all the way in the middle. Is that fair? Halfway? All right, we'll keep it there. Nasus is hard to rate, I think, because I see it a lot, and every time my opponent uses it against me, I get tilted. But it looks really ugly. This is like the ugliest Nasus I've ever seen. People just like Ha because it's cute, but other than that, it's the same as Misfortune. That's fair enough. As if regular Nasus is pretty. I mean, he looks pretty badass. I don't know, I kind of like Nasus. Decane. What the dog doing? I think in League, Nasus looks better than in Runeterra. I think Nasus level 2 looks good, but I think his level 1 and 3 look ugly. Nasus emote is like too direct, not ironic enough. Exactly. That's why I put this, the Aurelian Soul emote, in A tier, because it has that perfect amount of irony when you use it. It's like you're going so over the top because you made a cool play that your opponent can't really be mad at it. I don't see this Shyvana being used unless you're misplaying yourself and you're like trying to be funny about it. E tier. Poro has to be S tier. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think Poro is still better than Viego, but I think Viego is really good too. For a second, because these literally serve the same purpose, when I saw this Viego emote get released, I thought it was better than Poro and it was going to be paid to win, but I still think Poro is actually just a little bit better. It's too much? Yeah, it's a little too over the top. The Vlad emote is, yeah, the Vlad emote definitely is. Pyke, I'm disappointed with this because I feel like it doesn't have many uses. I love Pyke. He's my main champion in League. I really like Lurk. But what is the use of this? This is like, this is when you miss Allegiance, when you miss Lurk. You can only use this when you miss something that you're trying to do. And, you know, I don't always play Allegiance decks. I don't always play Lurk decks. It's sad. I would put an F tier because it fails so horribly at what it's trying to do. But because it's Pyke, I'm putting it in E. You miss any kind of RNG? Yeah, my RNG has been pretty bad lately. So, controversial again. I think Quinn is better than Heimerdinger. The fact you get 2 characters being like, what are you doing? Instead of just 1. I think it's better. But it serves the same purpose. So they have to like be closely together. How come Thresh is put in S? Thresh? There's no Thresh. This is Karma. So the Pride Poro. I think it's a classic. I think it's better than Tiari too. I'll put him right next to it. Personally, I upgraded from Heimer to Quinn and don't regret it. Very good choice, yeah. Karma's the best emote? I think it's the second best. I think Lulu is the best. So the Renekton, I don't see used that often, but I think it's very, very good. It's like when you're about to win and then your opponent has like a 20 attack Nasus, you know, like in that last game, and then he just kills you with an atrocity when you're at 20 health, you use the Renekton. It's like, I want to be mad at this, but this exact scenario has happened so many times that I cannot be mad at it anymore. That's what I see Renekton used for. Riven is also really good. I think Riven is B or A. It's like when you have a deny chain. That's a good point too. Yeah, when there's like your deny being denied, you use Renekton. Perfect. I think it's A tier, but our A tier is getting kind of full. I actually think I have to move Viego down because he's just kind of a strictly worse Poro, and maybe Leona too. Oh yeah, there is no Thresh. Thresh is like the Lantern emote, right? This one. Is this Riven emote underrated, or this one that we just put in A? Because I don't think this one is bad, but I don't think it's great either. It's probably D tier. Where do you put Thresh? Probably D or E. Actually, there's no way. Well, no, I think D tier is fine. Shen is S tier. It's a classic. It's the ultimate good manner emote, whereas Braum is the ultimate bad manner emote. Should put them next to each other. Shen is respectful Braum, yeah. They're like the good side and the bad side. Shyvana, nah, it's bad. It's just bad. We'll put them next to the other Shyvana. Soraka is very good. I'm putting her at the top of B tier. I don't like this one at all. E tier. Actually, this one might even be F tier. It's so horribly executed. I think the emote that tilts me more than Braum is Swoon. But the usage of it is very limited. I think Braum is still better. Tahm Kench is hard because I think he is solid. He serves the same purpose as Vladimir and Braum. But he's not quite as good at it. I can, like, when I see Tahm Kench, I'm not sure if my opponent is being bad-mannered, milady. I'm not sure if he's being bad-mannered or being friendly. I still think it's A tier. Tom is BM Vlad. It's fair. So this is a personal favorite because it's Talia. I know a lot of people don't like this one, but I think she's okay. Putting her at the top of C. Taric is D. It's not terrible. This one, oh wait. This one was seeing so much play, this Taric. The pool party one. I think this one is fantastic, actually. I should use that one more again. Teemo is D tier. This one is E tier. This Thresh. Here's a Thresh. I see some people use this, and I don't think it's bad at what it does. Grandpa Roji always uses it. I think he made it popular. Oh, I haven't watched his content, but when Talia came out, I've been equipping it because it just looks nice. Earth is top tier. I don't know where though. It's either S or A. Tier S? Yeah, I think it's S. Oh, the Taric one? Yeah, this one is really good. This one is terrible. F. Victor, also terrible. F. Cat needs to be next to Victor, but they're also terrible. Vladimir, I think it's the top of tier A. How dare you not put Victor in S tier? If it was a champion card, I'd put him in S tier. Fizz is the best. Fizz is good. I used this quite a while when it came out. It definitely fell off a lot. I think it's a solid D tier. It's really good if you're using this in a Fizz deck, though, and you dodge a spell. Yasuo is pretty good. I think it's also D tier. I think this one is cringe. I think this is one of the most cringe emotes in the game. E tier. Low E tier. It's a really ugly Yasuo, too, yeah. Yone, I don't know. I think Yone is a little better. If Thresh is D, I think Yone is D too. Zillion is S tier. Just because it looks so funny. And Zoe is D tier. I think it's just the worst of the hello emotes. Doesn't the Heimer one spell love with the equation? Yeah, it does actually. Yasuo underrated. I think this one is terrible. It's one of the most cringe emotes. So this is it. This is our list. I don't think it's bad. I think this is solid. I definitely think little S, Karma number 2, like these as the top 2 is correct. Put Zoe higher. Trash isn't here. Yeah, I don't know where Trash, the lantern one, is.